Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. In the last video I talked to you about the Paxton Boys of Pennsylvania, and I also talked a little bit about, the cultural differences between the Native American tribes and the European settlers on the frontier. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will put a link up here. I strongly suggest you watch that first. Now I'm going to get into the Augusta Boys of Virginia. And, this is kind of more my wheelhouse because the Virginia frontier is what I've been studying for the last little bit. But in either location, they have similar cultural issues, similar political issues, because, there's the issues of the elite versus the common people. There's the issues of anyone on the backcountry, regardless of your status, feeling like you're a buffer for the eastern elites, so that they're safe from Indian attack. And the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, where these events take place, it serves as a popular area for travel. So now, if you go to Virginia and you visit, Interstate 81 goes north to south through the Shenandoah Valley. Before that, we had the Great Wagon Road, where all of these settlers would travel this path south from Pennsylvania throughout the Shenandoah Valley, the Blue Ridge, down into North Carolina. I'm sure you've probably heard about this before if you've studied the frontier and how it was settled. But before that, it was the Great Warrior Path. So for generations, the Iroquois had used this to travel south. The Cherokee had used it to travel north. Whether they're on the warpath or, they're just traveling for trade, this was a popular area to travel through. It's a lot easier than trying to go through the Appalachian Mountains themselves. So when the settlers, moved into this area, they knew that they were going to have to deal with it being used as a popular road for the Indians. This wasn't surprising, but there were issues from time to time. A group might steal a cow or a pig to eat along their travel. And for the gentry, this is a small price to pay for continued peace with the Indians. Oh, a pig? Okay, that's better than human life. But for the common folk, who might not have much to their name and they're trying to make a new life and support their families, the loss of even a single pig, that's a big deal for them. So, depending on your status in the frontier, you're going to look at this in a very different light. Now, on May 8th of 1765, there's a group of 10 Cherokee that want to travel from Stanton, the southern end of the Shenandoah Valley, north to Winchester. And they approach the county lieutenant of Augusta County, Andrew Lewis, and he gives them a pass and proper colors, which is supposed to ensure their safety, but he even tells them, this isn't absolute, you still need to be careful. Now, in Lewis's account to Governor Fauquier, or Fauquier, depending on how you want to pronounce that, the group of 10 Cherokee were attacked and their chief and 4 others killed, 2 wounded. The group of white frontiersmen was comprised of 20 or 30 men, so definitely outnumbering the Cherokee, and they were led by William Cunningham and John King. Lewis had immediately sent word, not just to the governor about what happened, but also to the Cherokee, to let them know what had happened to their warriors, and that he was taking it seriously and he was investigating. Now, over the next month, Andrew Lewis, he did what he could. He and his men did arrest 2 of the settlers involved, James Clendening and Patrick Duffy. Now, the former didn't even make it to the jail. He was rescued by his friends before they could get there. The latter spent 3 nights in jail. And on the 4th night, Lewis tells us, quote, "No less than 100 armed men posted themselves round the prison. Some of them entered the house of the jailer and demanded the key of the prison. It being refused them, they, after using some violence and many threats, with axes, broke the prison door and carried off the said Duffy, declaring at the same time that they had most of the county to back them, and that they would never suffer a man to be confined or brought to justice for killing of savages." End quote. The problems that Lewis faced in attempting justice in this matter was that, as he goes on to say, quote, It will be impossible, if any of the murderers be taken, to confine them in this country, nor is it likely that they can be brought to justice by the ordinary methods of law. For unless the persons that might take them were enabled to carry them down to Williamsburg as soon as apprehended by some authority from your honor, they will undoubtedly be rescued." End quote. They'd also found another dead Cherokee nearby, bringing the death count to 6. Of course, situations like this are never clear-cut. They're never neat and tidy. In escaping, 2 of the Cherokee had killed a blind man and his wife. And that makes for a really hard argument for self-defense. How are you going to claim self-defense against a blind man? The governor offered rewards to aid in the arrest of the guilty parties, but it was pointless. It didn't work. Even though Lewis had discovered most of the identities of the guilty, he couldn't seem to get them, arrested and keep them in custody without them getting broken out again. Then, on June 4th, the Augusta Boys, they issue a proclamation in response to all these events, with their version of the facts. They claim that the group of 10 were not Cherokee after all. They were Shawnee and Delaware, and that they were hostile. They claim that Andrew Lewis was not loyal to the king. They maybe some French sympathies is what they imply. And that they say that he intentionally provided a pass to hostile Indians to, put everyone in jeopardy. These accusations against Lewis, I think I can say absolutely are nonsense. If you look at the rest of his life and how long he served as, county lieutenant, leading the men to Point Pleasant in Lord Dunmore's War, going on to fight in the American Revolution, I don't see him as someone who is not loyal to the men of the backcountry. But they had to discredit him. Because, as I think I said, Andrew Lewis, he knew the Cherokee, at least some of the party, so he knew they were in fact Cherokee. And if they weren't going to discredit him, then they knew it would be hard to claim, oh hey, these were Shawnee, they were Delaware. And, that just didn't fit with the narrative that the Augusta Boys needed to push. Also, as part of their proclamation, they offered a bounty of 1,000 pounds for the arrest of Colonel Andrew Lewis, and 500 pounds each for William Fleming and William Crow. Now, obviously, they didn't have authority to really arrest them, not with any legitimacy, but if they were going to claim that Andrew Lewis isn't loyal to the crown and that they're the loyal subjects here, this bounty just goes kind of back it up and make them look more legitimate than they are. It may be impossible to say whether the Augusta Boys actually genuinely believed they were Shawnee and Delaware. If I was gonna put money on it, which I wouldn't do, but if I was going to, I would say they probably just didn't care. There had been, in the past, situations where the Cherokee had attacked as well. In 1758, I saw a reference to attacks against the locals and stolen property at the hands of the Cherokee. So for these settlers, it may not have mattered which tribes were officially the enemy right then. They may have just thought an Indian's an Indian's an Indian, so we're just gonna take care of it. And this is where the Paxton and the Augusta Boys are connected, not just in how they thought and their cultural background, but quite explicitly by the behavior of the Paxton Boys. In the wake of the murder of the Cherokee, the governor of Virginia, he wrote to the Board of Trade, quote, that the Paxton Boys of Pennsylvania have sent a message to our people that if they are not strong enough to rescue any of their party who may be apprehended, they will come to their assistance. For they say no man shall suffer for the murder of a savage, end quote. And you may notice that there is some very similar verbiage between the proclamation of the Augusta Boys and the words of the Paxton Boys. This whole no man shall suffer for the murder of a savage. That kind of goes back to what I'm saying. They don't care what the tribe is. They just care their own perception of, Indians and their perception of what their rights are here on the frontier and what they think they need to do to secure their families. tribe doesn't matter. Now, last video, I talked a little bit, I mentioned that the Paxton Boys were mostly, if not entirely, Irish Presbyterians. And I think I said that, don't judge all the Irish Presbyterians of the backcountry by their behavior. Not everyone was likely to have agreed. The settlers of the backcountry, whether we're talking Virginia or Pennsylvania, they were about 90% North Briton, to use a term from David Hackett Fischer's Albion Seed. Now, when he says North Britain, he's referring to Ulster, Ireland, to Scotland, and to North England. They have kind of similar culture, similar struggles. So it doesn't matter which colony you're in, they're going to think kind of the same way because they have that same background. But this is where we can get an example of the other side, because Andrew Lewis, he was born in Ireland. He is of that same background, and he doesn't side with the Augusta Boys. Yes, he was a county lieutenant, so he had a responsibility to see justice done, but, if he hadn't believed that what they did was wrong, he could have just tried to sweep it under the rug. He had, maybe he could claim that he didn't know who committed the crime, so what's he gonna do? There are things he could have done if he hadn't disagreed with them. So I think this is a good example of how, despite their similar backgrounds and experiences, they're not all going to do the same thing, and they're not all okay with the murder of a savage. The story of the Paxton Boys and the Augusta Boys, it's important for studying and understanding the frontier and the culture of the frontier and events that happen. It's a very different world from the eastern parts of the colonies. If we're talking Williamsburg or Philadelphia or Boston, just how people thought and behaved and their backgrounds, it's entirely different. So, it gives us a different picture of what was going on at the time so we can better understand our past. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button for me and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video, and we will talk more about early American history. Thanks, guys.